Hello my friends, Volcano Hopper here, wishing you a very happy summer. I'm super excited that the snow has stopped, at least for the moment, so that I can sit outside and enjoy this beautiful sunshine. Very excited about that. But I wanted to apologize for being AWOL for so long. One of the things that I do when I have a trip planned to go visit a volcano is I stick my nose in every single book that I can get my mitts on. I want to learn absolutely everything I can about the volcano that I'm getting ready to go visit before my boots ever touch the ground. So later this summer I have a trip planned to the Pacific Northwest. It's been a dream since I was a little girl to go climb Mount St. Helens, and later this year we're going to do it. So in the meantime, I've been reading like a fiend. So what have I been reading, you ask? Well, one of the books, the first one I started with, is this fantastic book, In the Path of Destruction, Eyewitness Chronicles to Mount St. Helens. This is written by Richard Waitt. Richard is a geologist and a volcanologist who has spent the last 39 years compiling stories of survivors to this eruption from 1980. And these stories are absolutely incredible stories. Mount St. Helens, when it erupted in 1980, was unlike anything we had ever seen in the United States. Lassen Peak had erupted in the early 1900s, but a lot had changed in 70 years, and people had forgotten about the impacts that volcanoes can have and the damage they can do. Our precedent for volcanic eruptions at the time was Kilauea and Mauna Loa down in Hawaii. Now those two volcanoes, while they can be pretty spunky at times, they're really pretty tame as far as volcanoes go. They're very effusive, their lava tends to flow, it's made predominantly of basalt, so it's very runny and it likes to flow and build that shield shape that is very common when you think of Hawaiian volcanoes. So nobody knew that Mount St. Helens was an entirely different animal. She's andesitic and dacitic, and that's a different type of lava. It's very sticky, it's got more gas content, and when it erupts, it tends to explode very violently. So all of the Cascade volcanoes, Mount Hood, Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, Mount Adams, they're all this same type of explosive volcano. And they don't erupt very often, but when they do, watch out. And that's exactly what happened in 1980. Mount St. Helens started having tons and tons of earthquakes, hundreds a day. It started in March, built up in April, and by May, there was a huge bulge on the north side of the volcano. Now at that point, volcanologists hadn't really experienced a lot of these types of eruptions, and they thought that volcanoes like this, andesitic volcanoes, blow straight up into the atmosphere, right up and out. They never expected what we call a lateral blast, and this is a blast that comes out the side of the volcano. So on May 18th, that's exactly what happened. The north face of the volcano, there was an earthquake and a landslide which released the pressure in the volcano, and everything came out to the north in this lateral blast. So people who were 5, 10, 20 miles away to the north of this mountain who thought they were safe were right in line with this blast, and many of them lost their lives. I think that's just tremendous, and one of the things I have learned about this volcano in my studies and in this book is just how powerful that eruption was. I think one of the statistics that blew my mind the most was people hiking on Mount Rainier almost 100 miles to the north of Mount St. Helens felt the temperature rise 50 degrees. Hikers on Mount Adams 30 miles away, it went from 40 degrees to 90 degrees like that. They are peeling off their jackets and their sweaters, and the snow is melting beneath their boots because of the heat that came out of this volcano. Of course, once everything was unleashed, it all went up into the atmosphere. Ash blew across the United States. We had ash in Indiana, where I was growing up at the time. So it was tremendous, the power of this eruption. And you hear about the science behind it growing up. You watch the videos and the news reports, and you hear about the death toll, which is extremely tragic. 57 people did die in this eruption, including one of my role models growing up, David Johnston. He was a volcanologist who definitely tried to play it safe. I'm sure he did not want to die in this eruption, but he was so brave, going into places like this crater or sitting on the ridge just 6 miles away from this volcano when he knew the dangers. but he did it anyway to learn about the volcano and to provide science and better warnings for people who may be exposed to volcanic eruptions. So you hear about the death count and you hear about the science and you watch the newsreels, but I've never before now heard the stories of the survivors, the people who were there, ground zero, who had to fight for their lives to survive from this thing. And in this book that he has compiled these stories in, it's incredible to read these stories. There were families with little children, maybe 5 years old and younger, who were camping. And all of a sudden the forest around them was blown down and it was scorching hot. People were buried in feet of ash and they had to trudge miles through the hot ash with severe burns to be found to even get to civilization. Helicopter pilots had to risk crashing because you can't fly with ash in the air, it'll choke the engine. They had to risk their life and limb to go save these people who had been stranded and camping. People camping with their friends lost their friends. One person survived and the person standing right next to them disappeared or was killed. The stories are incredible. There's a story of a couple who was camping on the south side of the volcano, well away from the eruption and the ash and the heat. But because of all the heat, the sudden melting of the glaciers and the ice caps on top of the volcano rushed in what we call a lahar, which is a mud flow, downhill, downriver, choking and flooding all the rivers, and it barreled over this couple who had to fight to survive, and miraculously they survived this mud flow and are still alive to talk about it today. It just boggles the mind, the power of this eruption and the tenacity and the strength of humans to survive things like this, and the way the community comes together afterward to support each other and help each other through it and save survivors who might be out there, but also come together to put better systems in place, better warning systems, better levees, better bridges, things like that, so that when Mount St. Helens erupts again, and she will, because she's spunky like that, and she's the most active volcano in the Cascades, perhaps there won't be a loss of life like there was in 1980. Mount St. Helens did erupt again in 2004 and erupted until 2008, but it was more of an effusive style eruption where the lava dome inside the crater started building up again. It's been pretty quiet since 2008. Occasionally she has swarms of earthquakes, but it's nothing like what they saw in 1980 or 2004 to 2008. So shout out to the volcanologists who are constantly monitoring this mountain and trying to provide better warnings and just better information about the volcano as it happens, and better systems in place with government, better ideas of how to evacuate or how to keep people safe and from going into these restricted areas. Because let me tell you, you don't want to go walking up an active volcano that might blow its top at any moment unnecessarily. There's such a thing as loving the volcanoes and wanting to learn about them. And yes, there are some risks involved that volcanologists have to take. But if you're out there and you're near an active volcano, please don't go romping around on its slopes unless it's absolutely necessary. Keep a safe distance away and heed all the warnings. The volcanologists really do know what they're talking about, and they're not trying to keep you away for their own, amusement. They're trying to keep you safe. But if you want to have a good read this summer, lay out on the beach or in your backyard or, on a camping trip, pick this book up. It's not exactly a light read. It's pretty thick. It's taken me a while to get through, but it really is an excellent read, and you'll learn a lot about the survivors and their stories, and it will really personify and make the eruption and what happened really seem real. I think sometimes it's really easy to keep your distance from it and it doesn't seem real, you just kind of seem jaded about it. This really puts names and faces to the experiences that happened 39 years ago. So enjoy the read. I will be back with another book report and let you know what else I am reading this summer in preparation for our trip as soon as I have another book finished. In the meantime, I hope you have an amazing summer and happy hopping, and we'll chat soon.